Let's start with this. And this is the first thing I noticed because we're going to work backwards a little bit. When Max Verstappen wins the race, they get clean points, right? Not a single point that was available at the top Red Bull didn't get. There was a better way to say that. But they got the pole point, they got 1, and they got 2. That's a great weekend. Internally, though, things don't look great. People were calling this the Google Drive to survive. Tim, you were among the journalists who were emailed the link of the infamous Google Drive. There's no way to verify whether or not that stuff is true. But here's what is true. Christian Horner met with the head of the FIA. It has become a story unto itself when I think Red Bull was hoping it would go away. Christian had to answer questions about it all weekend. He answered it at Sky Sports F1. You did an interview with him along with several other journalists. And Jos Verstappen has made some statements. So first off, when you talk to Christian, and this is only an hour or two ago, did you get a sense of his mood? That's what I'm really interested in. Like, what kind of energy was he putting off?
Yeah, there was so I never got any questions in or got to talk to him. I heard from him. I mean, there were journalists there that had to aggressively cover the story, and look, I respect that. And he got drilled with questions. There were moments where his PR had to step in and, calm things down a little bit because it got to the point where it was some journalists were being pretty aggressive with questioning and trying to get more information out of him. But that's fair because, I mean, it's like we had talked about earlier, Adam, where it's like it's not a really transparent thing that's gone on here. Like we still don't know all the ins and the outs. And yeah, like you said, we all got this Google Drive thing, and none of us know if the messages and everything that was in the Google Drive, any of it was real. So it just raises so many more questions. And instead of us really focusing on the things that were happening on track, which weren't great, let's be honest, it wasn't a very good race. It puts more eyeballs on the things happening off track, and so obviously this is a huge story off track. So, there's a lot going on there, and I we discussed before we even hit record here about the stuff going on with Jos Verstappen and Christian Horner.
Let me read the quotes that you sent. So Tim sent these quotes over. According to SNR Mail
from
Sport.
The Daily... Yeah, from Daily Mail, Jonathan McAvoy. Jonathan McAvoy was the journalist on that, and believe he was the one who did speak with Jos, and these were the quotes from that.
So Jos, and it's important to understand this, Jos doesn't work for Red Bull. Jos has no PR, so Jos is going to say what he wants to say. And isn't it interesting that all of the leaks were coming out of Dutch newspapers? Throwing that out there. There is tension here while he remains in position. This is what Verstappen Sr. said about Christian Horner. The team is in danger of being torn apart. It can't go on the way it is. It will explode. He is playing the victim when he is the one causing the problems. Now, let me say this. Tim, I wouldn't expect you to have seen this because you were at the race. But on camera, there were two very important things that Red Bull were putting across through Sky Sports, through TSN in Canada where I was watching. And the first thing is that Christian, and this was all over Instagram, walked in holding hands with Jerry Horner, his wife, and at the podium was standing with her when Max and Sergio were awarded. And then several times we saw Christian with the head of the Thai branch of Red Bull, not Red Bull Racing, Red Bull. Now, the Manischitz family who founded Red Bull, obviously, they have a huge corporation, but there is another major shareholder in Thailand who I believe owns 51% of the company and ultimately gets to make the decision. And Christian was standing right beside him at pit row and several times was seen with him before the race on the track. It seemed to be sending a message. And we talked about this last episode, that there could be a split down the middle of this team. The one thing that can tear a almost perfect season apart, like last year was almost perfect, right? All you have to do is just keep doing what you're doing and you're great. but some people cannot handle great. Some people self-destruct. Some people, and there's lots of therapy for this, some people need that sort of chaos. They need dysfunction. And if Red Bull can't figure out what to do with a guy like Jos Verstappen, I'm not saying that Christian Horner didn't do what he was purported to have done. I'm not saying any of that wasn't true. We don't know. We just don't know. But what I can tell you is that Jos Verstappen's talking to the press. He's being very open about what he's saying. And it's very clear that even on the message between Max and Christian at the end of the race, it wasn't the same warmth as last year. I could sense it, you know? And that is a potential huge issue for Red Bull Racing. This could tear them apart, Tim.
It could. Yeah, I think that, you made a good point with Jos essentially not being an employee for the team. So he's not really bound by their PR, and he doesn't have his own PR. So he can go and talk to journalists and whomever he would like. It starts to become an issue when we get things like this, and then we get the story from the Daily Mail, and you have to kind of wonder what is going on between both Christian and Jos. I mean, that opens up another can of worms of, okay, well, what could possibly be going wrong with those two relationship? Christian obviously has built this team up to be a very successful racing team and has given Max an incredible race car and always praises Max when, he's winning, and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just curious to know what would be going on between those two. And that's something, again, we don't know. Nobody knows what is happening between Jos and Christian. So it keeps raising even more questions, which then puts pressure internally on the team. And so you have to kind of wonder, when does this kind of eventually fall back onto Max, right? Because I think at the end of the day, there has to be something that blows back on him from this. You would have to think, anyways.
Tim, it's a good question. I mean, when you think about professional athletes, and obviously, I get a lot of exposure to hockey. One of the things that people recommend that you don't do when you're a hockey player is read the media. Now, F1 media is far more salacious than hockey media, and I know that F1 drivers are aware of what's said about them. F1 teams are aware of what's said about them. European newspapers they're just a little bit more edgy than we are. The concern is that Max Verstappen has the opportunity here to be the best driver that's ever lived. He's already put in the best season we've ever seen. He's got a lot of years to catch guys like Michael Schumacher, Lewis Hamilton, Ayrton Senna. But if there's a Mount Rushmore in the next 10 years that's carved to a stone somewhere, those are the names that are going to be on it if Max keeps this up, right? And so having people around you that keep you grounded and keep you steady are good things to have. Jos Verstappen doesn't seem like that to me. Jos Verstappen seems like the kind of guy who is the antithesis of that. Now, he drove a lot of what Max's early career was, trained him, had some pretty extreme tactics when it came to training him. But Tim, I do honestly and openly question, and have for years, based on what this guy has said in the media, is he a good influence to have around the team ultimately? And Red Bull doesn't have to have him in the garage if they don't want him there, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, we also have to wonder, what does Max want, right? Because, he's very close with his father. The two of them arrive to the track together all the time. He kind of manages his career at the same time. And yeah, he cares about his dad, right? And so it's, how do you, I guess if you're Red Bull, you're going to have to get involved in some form or fashion, and maybe they already have something, again, we don't know, and try and cool it down, try and cool down the temperature, try and make sure that they can find a way of making this, I guess, sort of harmonious. Because I think at the end of the day, you're Max Verstappen, You're on top of your game. You are arguably the best driver in F1 right now, and you have all this stuff happening off the track, and eventually that's, I think, in some form or fashion it'll affect you in some way, and I think for Red Bull that's a detriment to what they're trying to achieve on the track. And so there has to be some point where I think Red Bull gets involved. Like we're talking like the parent company, GmbH, gets involved in some form or fashion. I mean, I just think you just have to be. I mean, not saying that they already have or they will. I'm just saying that you would think that they would have to get involved.
Yeah, they can't sit by and do nothing. Now, a lot of the times what companies will do is they'll play for time. They'll wait it out. They'll see if things calm down. And it's entirely possible Red Bull does that. I just feel like, this guy seems to feel like he's untouchable right now. My kid's the world champion. What are you going to say to me? What are you going to do? You're not going to let me in that garage? Well, I'm sure Max would have something to say about that. And I'm sure that's his attitude. And I think, boy, if you have that kind of an attitude, at a certain point that comes back and bites you. And the person I don't want it to bite is Max Verstappen, right? Yeah. I don't want somebody's family member, and you don't want this in any case, changing the trajectory of somebody else's career. Now, Max is unbelievable right now. He is laser focused. He's awesome. So we'll see where it all goes. These are uncomfortable conversations to have, Tim, but frankly, I think we got to call a spade here. At a certain point, somebody works for the team and somebody doesn't. And if the somebody who doesn't work for the team is causing trouble in the newspapers, you may not get that access anymore. I don't know. I mean, that would be a huge story too. Imagine Jos Verstappen's not allowed in behind the scenes there. That'd be huge.
That's another thing, right, Adam? It's kind of like, okay, well, Red Bull doesn't allow him in the garage, or they don't allow him to hospitality, but I don't think they can stop him from coming to the track. I don't think they can't do that. Stop him. Yeah, I don't think they can stop him from being in the paddock either. And I think that's, I still think, Jos would find a way of getting into the paddock, right? It just wouldn't stop him from being around, essentially. And so I think they have to find a way of bringing this to some sort of a conclusion where, I don't know, both parties are happy, because I think that's probably the only way it can end, really.
I'm trying to figure out, Tim, like what more do you need? Like what more can Christian, like from a purely race perspective, what more can Christian Horner do for the Verstappen family? He's believed in Max for years, made him one of the youngest world champions of all time, has championed him all the way up from Toro Rosso all the way through. Was happy to, him and Helmut Marko were happy to tell Daniel Ricciardo, yeah, we want you to win, but then it's going to be Max's turn right after that. They've backed this guy, and they should. They made the right call. Yep. Max earned that. But you have to wonder what the hell went on, because I mean, Red Bull and Christian Horner specifically have backed this guy all the way. What happened?
Yeah, no, it was, Max kind of talked about that a bit yesterday when I believe it was yesterday. Oh my God, my days mixed up. It was I think it was post qualifying. I was in the press conference with him. I'd asked Max a question about he jumped into the tow with Piastri, and I asked him, what were you thinking when you did that? Like, where did you make the call? And he answered it. And then another guy followed up asking him about, Christian Horner's place at the team, et cetera, et cetera. And, Max had been responding to a lot of these questions all through testing, and again, through the first few days of the Grand Prix here. And yeah, Max, was like, look, Christian built this team to what it is. And as a guy who runs this team, he does an incredible job at building this team into this powerhouse that it is right now. And you have to give him credit for that. And so it doesn't seem like there's anything frosty either between Max and Christian either. I kind of just feel that Max is just like, look, just keep me out of all of it. I just want to race. Like, that's all I want to do.
Yeah, but he can't do that forever.
And I just don't care. That's what exactly. But that's what I think, Max's mindset is just, I just want to shut everything out and just keep it all away from me. And I'm just going to go and race. That's what I get from it.
And you know what? This weekend, Tim, it worked, and it worked beautifully. Max 1, Sergio 2,
Oh, yeah.
Carlos 3. Love that.